It's called rent. Well, I'm off cue here. Yes, it's called rent, people. China now has an answer to the housing crisis. It's called rent. After, 170 episodes doing the show, I'm really happy to say that China now has an answer to its housing crisis. It's called rent. I don't know how many millions of empty homes they have in China, and they just... It's phenomenal. I mean, like, it's... The amount of... These are all ghost cities. They're all empty. That's why there's 2 cars on the road. Like, if you had that much infrastructure, you wouldn't even be able to cross this street at 3 in the morning. With the amount of vehicles that would be occupying this area here. And the buildings keep going down. At least about 25 kilometers down in the horizon, there's more buildings like this, just piling up. Well, here it is, guys. So let's read this article. It's actually a big deal. In 2005, when I first began living in China, rent was incredibly low, as in $100 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment in Xinjiang University in Hangzhou. This wasn't just due to the fact that everything was cheaper back then or lack of adjusting for inflation, but relative to the general price points of other goods and services, rent in China was staggeringly cheap. There was simply a lack of demand for the rental properties, and it would have been a stretch to even call it the rental market a necessity. It hardly even existed. While manual migrant workers were renting out bunks and dormitories and rooms in suburban villages. The moment of educated white-collar workers to China's big cities had yet to shift into high gear. There was an absolute glut of new housing being brought onto the market, and the cost of purchasing a home was relatively affordable, not to mention the fact that there was an acute amount of social pressure to own a home, and having to rent was almost pitiable. Today, the housing scene in China is very different, with a sizable portion of population priced out of the market in key areas, as well as a population that has grown accustomed to being geographically agile and moving from city to city for the best opportunities. Renting has started to lose its taboo status, and there are even signs of it starting to be seen as modern, physically strategic, and perhaps even a little chic. In many parts of China, the housing market has topped out and stabilized. The construction boom has been curbed, and there is growing suspicion among young generations that going into long-term debt to pay an overinflated price for a house that statistically will be ready to be demolished around the same time they have paid it off. That's if it lasts that long, I say. May not be the best life decision. So, wait a minute. You telling me those houses that were built in 1910 in Vancouver that are selling for $2.4 million won't be standing in 50 to 100 years when the house gets paid off? Come on. It's fake news. Chris' younger generation has become an industry now to set a boom. So here it is. It talks about the boom. And then it talks about the real reasons Chinese love throwing money into housing market. It's like part of a wedding deal. Wow, look at all the condos. Oh my God. It's like part of a wedding deal, Chow explained. You get the house, then you start your own family. Once you have a house, a decent car, an okay job, then you can sit down. Get a latte at Starbucks and see what you are as a person. It's more of a trade rather than a romance. The crazy cost of housing. So, however, the wedding trade is now feeling the ripples of financial reality, and the cost of housing in China's economic epicenters is making some people accept long-term renting as a viable option. Housing affordability versus salary in China is the most out of whack in the world, Tanner pointed out. And almost all salary earners would struggle to buy a house with their wages. Well, that's what's happening in Canada, right? So, which is making more young Chinese who want to stay in big cities realize that they're unlikely to ever buy a house there. Well, that's what's happening in Toronto. All our houses got paid out. A lot of them are empty. And a lot of young people are realizing, and this goes back to the video I made this morning, Escape from Toronto. Right here, Escape from Toronto. Very strong case for moving the hell out of Toronto. Escape Toronto. Video I did earlier today. How people in China afford their outrageously expensively homes. So price to income ratio for in one of China's top cities is startling at 34.9 years, meaning that it would take 35 years of an average salary to pay for an average home. Even while China's middle class continues to grow, the rising cost of housing has doubled that of the disposable income. Compounding this issue is that not only of the housing prices rising to unaffordable heights, but larger down payments are being required and mortgage interest rates are going up, making buying a home seem more like a far-off dream than the average Chinese millennial. So here it is, guys. China is looking at a new generation. China is currently around 400 million millennials who are entering the country's labor housing. 399 million of them are men. And who are entering the country's labor housing markets with a different set of life experiences and outlooks that their parents and grandparents. China's young generation, the first to grow up into a relatively prosperous country, also face a different set of physical realities than their predecessors. So here it is, the rise of renting. So now people, over 200 million people in China are now renting their homes. And this may just be the beginning of a sector that's going to explode in the coming years. While China's rental market is currently valued by Jones Lang LaSalle is more than 1 trillion yuan, 140 billion. That's a lot. That's a huge sector. Renting still only makes up a mere 2% of the housing market. The Chinese government is very aware of the economic potential that the social necessities of the rental market and the 2017 launch new initiative. So here it is, guys. This is what I'm scared of. I'm going to tell you what I'm scared of. A lot of people that want to own in China can't afford and then move out to Western countries and then continue buying what we have left that hasn't been sold. So this is it. China has an answer to its housing crisis. It's called rent. With 300 to 400 million people renting now, China is... Yeah, guys, if you're handy with a hammer or if you're handy with steel, if you know what I mean, get over to China because right now, home repair is going through the roof in China by Brian McNeil. I did read an article about that where a lot of the people, when they hire contractors, they don't trust them. They don't put down a down payment to start the work because they don't trust them that they'll never come back and stuff like that. Very untrustful between the employee and the worker. And then the workers are scared that when they do work on someone's house or do renovations on something or fix an apartment or something, that the worker won't get paid. They'll just be flagged away until they get lost. So that's another problem. So it's very untrustful. You know what I'm saying? So umpire's supposed to say humans need to cooperate with one another to coexist, and jobs are necessary for nations to have functioning economies. You pay someone else for the labor that you cannot do yourself. The problem with that is... No. The problem with that is the untrustworthy. I read an article where, like a contractor is scared to do a work on a condominium structure. Like, for example, like a condo structure is falling apart. So they got to resurface it or do something to the outside so parts of it don't fall and kill somebody on the street. Well, what's happening now is the owner of the building, I guess, the owner association, doesn't trust the contracting company, and the contracting company doesn't trust the homeowner association for getting paid. The homeowner association won't pay the contracting company a down payment to get started, and so they don't need